All right, guys. Incoming board game request. Fritz, Zia, Legends of Adrift. In terms of acquisition, what do you think in terms of adding it to my collection? Because you referenced it in a couple of your other board game videos where you have these three piles in your collection. And sometimes they're organized. Sometimes they're literally are piles. For pile number one are games that you play every single week. And I'm going to kind of switch the narrative here, switch the vision and the voice, switch from third person to first person. My first pile of board games are games that I play every single month, almost weekly. Stuff like Dark Souls, Pathfinder the Adventure card game. Games that I either enjoy or have a really good mechanic in terms of narrative and having fun and throwing some dice and having a good time. Zombicide Black Plague. Then there's tier 2 of games that I enjoy playing and they work, but they require a little bit more commitment. Something like Kingdom Death Monster. Fantastic narrative, fantastic game, but you need to be able to commit to a couple of gaming sessions and build out your settlement before we can even get into the actual progression of the game. Something like Descent, First Edition, or TI. Like, those are amazing games. I would love to play those games every week, but the time commitment and the player commitment to really get the most and enjoy that unique experience, it needs to be set up ahead of time. So pile 2 games are awesome games, but they require certain circumstances. So they tend to only happen every couple of months or specifically not something I bring to the gaming club or the board gaming club, but like you set it up. And then pile 3 are games that I enjoy them, but the mechanics are a little bit off or they don't get to be played as much. A perfect example of that would be Runebound 2nd Edition. It's a fantastic game. The narrative is really well. It's done. It's fun. But the downtime to as a solo game, it's great. But downtime with other players, and it's boring downtime. It's no interaction downtime. It's no decision downtime. It really, really, really drags the game down. And from that perspective, and I love Runebound. I really do. It's one of my favorite games. But it's in that third pile because at that edition, it really is only a solo type game. So Zia is in the first pile of games for a variety of reasons. First, just in terms of presentation, the components are fantastic. The pre-painted ships look amazing. And in terms of a space opera type game, if you think about all the various games that are out there, a lot of them tend to be fantasy, right? Sword and board, sword and sorcery, some sort of monsters, some sort of magic, treasure. It's something, even look at Zombicide Black Plague. Well, okay, so now we have, should have been called Xenocide, but I'm sure that's trademarked. We have Invader, and I went all in for Invader just because I love the Zombicide mechanic and franchise. So be able to do that in a space setting makes it very, very unique. But if we look at the difference between modern Z-Side and Black Plague Z-Side, Black Plague seems to be a lot stronger. So the fantasy force is something that is really with a lot of us, and a lot of games push in that direction. So to have a sci-fi type game and to have it done well and to have it be able to scale and a variety of choices, that alone puts it in the unique play pile. The second reason why I really enjoy the game is it is an opened sandbox type game. And yes, there are always limitations on a board game, and so there's a couple of areas where it slows down a little bit, but you really kind of get to do whatever you want. And it breaks down to, do you want to be a trader, go around getting various resources, and you don't have to be dedicated to just this. You can kind of see as things happen, and as you flip tiles, it has this discovery system. As you add tiles, they're random. So the sector is going to build out. So you might start out being a trader, but then there's opportunities to explore, or there's opportunities to plunder and turn a pirate. There's multiple strategies in here, or I prefer the term warlord. It's a little more dynamic than space pirate, unless I can be an ice pirate in there. So exploring that perspective, multiple paths to victory. Paths that can change at any moment. Now, this is kind of unique because you sit down to play the games. The rules are there's a couple of points that are a little bit nebulous, like all gaming systems, but it plays pretty quick and it's pretty easy to understand. Well, what do you do? How do you win? Well, you get fame points. How do I get that? You get it by doing whatever you want. It takes a few turns for people to really realize, like, wow, this is an open-ended world. In terms of alpha players or kingmaker type players or people that want to hog the narrative, it's great because they can't box you into it. They can't alpha you because there's no one way. I mean, they'll still offer their opinion anyway, those type of players, but they're not going to kind of ruin the game for you. So from that perspective of dynamic space exploration, there's a lot to offer. In terms of balance, it's not as balanced. It's open sandbox, but being a warlord is a little bit challenging because as the game goes on and scales up and you get more resources and you upgrade your ships, we'll talk about that in a second, the shields quickly grow. You have shields, weapon systems, and cargo space on your ship. Those are kind of and energy, kind of the primary attributes. Your ability to jack up the shields goes up quicker than your ability to deal damage. So at some point, your ships become almost impossible to destroy. That makes kind of the path of the warlord or a dedicated warlord path not 100% playthrough, which is good because some people are pretty bloodthirsty, or I tend to be in it. You're going to have to think. You're going to have to shift away. And especially if you're playing with multiple players, you're not going to be able to be everywhere at once. So then maybe you switch over to trading. Maybe you switch over to exploration to get fame points. A lot of different things. And especially if you're a reactive player where in the moment you're willing to switch, you're willing to gamble, you're willing to say, oh, look at this sector, 2 places to explore, and I can be the first to grab those tokens. Like I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna expend the extra energy. I'm gonna gamble it. I'm gonna go for it on there. So a lot of really unique choices. The other piece, and it does this so well, is, and this is unique in a space type game where you're the captain of your ship, it has this role-playing feel to it because you're upgrading your ship, not only in terms of abilities and weapons and stuff, but physically going from different tier ships in the miniatures in there. So it's this achievement unlocked that rewards you for playing, that rewards you for being bold and taking risks and upgrading your ship. You almost have a fantasy type role-playing feel to it, set in a sci-fi type universe. Very interesting, very unique. Downside, there's no limit in terms of what you can do. It's very dynamic game turn in there. The closest thing that I can describe it, and this is also why I love this game, Conan the board game, your turn, you have a number of energy crystals in Conan that you get to activate. So you can decide, a lot of games simplify it, and it's not in a bad way, but like Descent and Zombicide, you have 3 actions. So move, attack. Open a door, I fail. Open a door again, I pass, move in. Okay, there's your 3, obviously if you level up. Or a game where it's like, first I have to move, then I can attack. Or it's move and attack, or attack. You're very limited. In Conan, just to contrast it, you have action points. You have these energy crystals. You can move, spend some crystals and move, and then swing your sword and attack, and then jump over something, and then attack, and then throw something, and then search a chest. It depends on how much you want to spend. Zia is the same way. You can have a very long turn. You could have a very short turn, depending on what you want to do, how far you want to push. The challenge here, of course, becomes, and I'm a big fan of big games. I love more players. I love a lot of players. I love a lot of different ways of thinking on the tabletop. So if we can put down with 5, 6, 7 players, that's good. Not all games scale well with this. Games that have limited finite actions like Zombicide Black Plague, that works. Because look, here's your 3 things. What are you going to do, right? And there's a lot of zombies coming, so what are you going to do? But games where there's no finite turn, this could potentially lead to some downtime. And once you add in an open gaming world, there's a chance for analysis paralysis. Now you're like, do I explore? Do I do this? You have to kind of be aware of that. I won't say force a turn. I won't say like do a sand timer or kind of a reminder clock or a chess clock type thing, because that kills some of the strategy or the fact that you can shift in the moment and really think who's going next, who hasn't gone, what are they going to interact, you lose more than you gain. But if there are a number of players in your group that are, true Euros and they're going to analyze everything to death, the game's going to slow a little bit. So I would say 3 or 4 players max above that. What counters it is the victory conditions. And this is the biggest thing that I think really makes this game or allows this game to be played in a variety of circumstances. And I'm going to compare it to another game. Dark Souls. I love Dark Souls, the board game. I love it on there. But one of the challenges with it, and it's a completely legitimate challenge, is the board game and trying to mimic the video game. Grinding is important. Your character starts out weak. You have to fight a boss monster at the end, whether it's a mini boss, mega boss, main boss. So you beat up some minions in a room. You get some souls. That's the currency. You go back to the blacksmith, Andre. You buy some loot. Maybe you equip it. Maybe you don't. You then rest at the bonfire, get your health back, get your stuff back, get your rerolls back. The encounters get reset, and you run through them again. Now you're going to become a little more powerful. You're going to have other options, other strategies. But there's this idea of grinding your way through. So what that means is to fight a boss monster with 4 players, you're going to grind through potentially 3 times before you're ready. That means the game, it says 90 minutes. It's more like, if you know the rules, it's more like 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And that's okay. But that means if I'm going to bring Dark Souls to play with the group, if we have a finite set time like at a shop or a club, it might not be able to make it. The great thing with Zia is you're playing on fame points. You're playing on victory points. First player to reach X wins. Then second, third place, fourth place, onward. So you can leave the game open-ended and say we're going to play to, 15 points. Or what I find really works well is playing at a club or a shop. You get there 6:30, everyone's ready to go at 7, the place closes at 9. You say, look, at 8:30, last moves. So we're going to play till 8:30. And however far we get, whoever wins, it's open-ended. That is the real strength of the game, that it has a finite victory condition, but it's infinite in the number of ways that you can play this. So it scales really well to players. It scales to different strategies, different victory conditions, and absolutely to have that in a space-based narrative. As much as I would love to say, look, I would love it if it was like Zia, Legends of a Fantasy type game, the game is really refreshing and really unique in that sci-fi futuristic universe. And for that reason, that's why the game is always in my number 1 pile. And that's why absolutely I'm always eager to take it, to play it, and to explore it. So if you're thinking about acquisition, absolutely. I mean, it is a classic. It is a great game. It is a unique game that if you bring, you will definitely get the plays. And each play through is going to be different, not only in terms of random what you discover and your strategy, but then once you interject the various player personalities, that makes it much, much more potent and much more interesting to play.